Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Worcester Township Board of Supervisors business meeting for August 17th, 2022. Would you please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? My name is Rick DeLello. I'm the chairman of the board. To my right soon enough is Steve Quigley, who is our second member. Lou Betts is unavailable to be at tonight's meeting. He would be our third member to my left. On the side table, we have Bob Brandt, who's our township solicitor. And on the back table, we have Paul Leonard, who is our interim township manager. First and foremost, does anybody have any informational items for the board tonight?
I do, Mr. Chairman. We would announce that the board held an executive session on July 26, 2022, to discuss the anticipated resignation of the township manager. There was another executive session held on August 10, 2022, for the purpose of interviewing prospective candidates for the township manager's job.
Thank you, Bob. Does anyone else have any informational items for the board? Please note that we are videotaping tonight's meeting as well. First item on our agenda is public comment. We do ask that you limit your public comment to 5 minutes. Does anybody have any public comment for the board this evening? Bob?
We don't have that five-minute clock.
We don't, so some of the...
Limited tonight.
I'll talk slowly in my head.
Midnight.
Robert Fesnack, 2203 Alabac Lane, Worcester. So, like many other people, I was not at the last board meeting, but as many people were surprised to hear that the motion regarding the vote for the referendum on the fall ballot for open space purposes was not seconded. So, in spite of 900 plus residents signing a petition asking for that at the polls, and in spite of the significant support at previous meetings here that people have spoken at, and talking to neighbors, colleagues, and friends. But I'd like to look forward and see if we can work together on some stuff regarding open space. I think that, hopefully we can work together on some of these objectives that I have. And to that point, I have a couple recommendations just want to kind of put out for the board to consider and think about.
Sure.
So one is, we have that $1.5 million-ish open space acquisition fund. Pointing to the last study I saw was around $1.5 million, and that was a couple of years ago. But I think at one of the board meetings, Tommy had confirmed it was in that ballpark. Okay, so we have $1.5 million, but it's unrestricted. As the 2019 Conservation Finance Study said, it could be used for anything. It could be taken back from that fund, put in the general fund. It could be used for any purpose for the township. So it's really a little bit more semantical, that it's an open space acquisition fund, but it's not dedicated. I would recommend that we make it restricted and dedicated for open space fund. We have the money, it's already in there. It wouldn't be a big deal. But at least then I think it gives credibility to that fund. To say it's an open space acquisition fund, but it's really a general fund, I think misleads the residents. So I think that's one recommendation. The other one is, again, we have about $14 million in the general fund. Our budget runs somewhere in the vicinity of $4 million a year. So going forward, I would like to see some type of policy where on an annual basis, okay, we would fund that dedicated restricted acquisition fund for open space purposes. Put it in the budget and just fund it. I mean, if we seem to have plenty of, we run a very good budget, we seem to have excess cash, I don't know the last time we funded that, but I would love to see some type of dedicated funding going into that on an annual basis. The last item that I just have is, this with regard to the Worcester Fall 2022, the one that just came out, newsletter, so the most recent. So there's an article that I think it tends to be misleading in some ways. I don't think it's intentional. I'm a person who likes to just be clear and be open to everybody and try not to spin things. But one is that the headline says, supervisors reject call to raise taxes. I think that's wrong. The supervisors did not reject an increase in taxes. You rejected giving the residents the opportunity to vote in the fall whether they want a dedicated fund for open space purposes or not. That's what was turned down, not an increase per se. Indirectly, you could argue, but I think it's misleading in the fact that really what the question on the table and the motion that would have been seconded and voted on was to put a question on the ballot, let the residents, let these people who have signed a petition, who say they want to vote on that issue, if it gets turned down, it gets turned down, but let's give them the option. But anyway, so I think that was misleading. There was a quote that said, if approved, it would have increased property tax tenfold. Now, mathematically, correct. However, the fact that we didn't say in there that the average cost to a resident or a household in Worcester would be $100 a year to have a dedicated open space fund that throws off both economic value to the residents and lifestyle values to the resident, I think tends to mislead or confuse people. Clearly, tenfold increase in a tax sounds much, much worse than $100 a year when you're getting these other benefits. So again, I would have put in there that equates to an estimate of $100 a year or something to quantify it in a much better way. And the last one was request to increase property taxes was made by a small group of township residents. In actuality, the request was made by 900 plus residents who signed a petition on primary day. The small group simply conveyed the wishes of those 900 people. So it wasn't a small group that decided to request this. It was really a small group that conveyed what almost 1,000 people in the township in one day had asked for. So I just think some of those are misleading. Again, not intentional, but I think the reader can be confused with regard to that. And I would love to see some type of correction or revision go out with regard to that. Thanks.
Okay, Bob, I appreciate your comments as always.
Okay, Rick, Bob, a couple of things. You suggested that it was already brought up, about the township contributing money to the fund. And I think I said it, I believe a couple of meetings you were at, I said, instead of raising the money from asking the taxpayers to pay, we'll just take a few $100,000 out of the fund and put it in an open space fund. So that was already suggested. That was something that was already said here at least once, maybe twice at the township meetings about that, to establish a fund. Because we said in conjunction with that is that the township has an open space fund, and a question went out, have you guys contributed? Are people contributing to the fund? Mr. Ryan developed this having so much land by year, a certain year, and the only way we're going to obtain that is if people working with either their accountant, their lawyer, or maybe the county to do some financial planning, maybe we can dedicate a park in somebody's name. Maybe the new property bought over there for $2.5 million, maybe somebody would like to do that part of an endowment in the townships. Hey, listen, we'd like to donate money for this project. So if a Hyder Park, a Palmer Park, different parks, we could do that. So I guess the question is, if it's going to be a township issue, I think the people in the township need to start contributing money to the fund. We have a fund there, and I think someone over here mentioned, well, we'll wait for the referendum to get passed, and we'll let everybody pay. But I think if you're going to ask for a program, I think some people need to step forward and start donating to the fund. I think we've only signed 25 thank you letters so far, to people in the township that have actually donated to the open space fund. So if people don't want to donate, that's fine, but you can't have a bank account with money in it unless people are willing to contribute to it. There's something coming up. Mr. DeLillo has it there. I give it to him regarding open space that I got from the County Planning Commission. If people are interested in preserving the farm, in 2 weeks there's a presentation. They're having a dinner up the road in the upper end of the county. So we'll make it available. Maybe we'll put it in, the peak of the week.
Right.
People that want to do that. But I think it's important for the people, if we're going to try to move forward on this open space initiative, I think we have to start contributing to it personally as well as the township. The other issue is that, and I mentioned at the last meeting, there's a project coming along in the township that'll make the Palmers look small. And it's tough if you're the landowner. The property may be worth 5, 7, I don't know what the property's worth, $10 million. We, the farm board, would probably offer that property maybe $17,000 an acre, probably in that ballpark. There's a big gap between it. And I think the folks have to understand that this land is the people's retirement fund in a lot of cases. It's been 3 or 4 family members involved in it, and we just can't restrict it by law. We can't restrict everything being built. And I think that's the premise sometimes, that we can save all the land in the township, and we can't. We have a list, Mr. Ryan, before he left,
Right.
I've been working on an inventory of properties that within a certain level where it's worth to keep. You know, we're not looking at properties that people can't see, and that's the original purpose of the Farmland Preservation Program. It was to preserve pristine properties, not properties back in some road back around the corner over a hill and down a valley that most of the public can't see. It was to preserve actual working farms, to help the farmers out in order to keep the farm going in an agricultural venue. It's getting tougher. Sitting on the farm board, development's coming in. The generations have passed that farmed. The kids are coming along and they're saying, you know what, Mom and Dad, we don't want to do that anymore. And I see that firsthand sitting on the farm board. I think this year we had 20 applications, which was a lot. But the applications we're getting now are probably 2nd, 3rd, and 4th tier properties. The properties such as something on Valley Forge Road or something on Skipback or one of our main roads in the township, the people that own those properties are saying, you know, thanks, we looked at the open space, but I can get 10 times more for it. And that's where our zoning laws come in. We can force the people to live within the zoning, but we can't do much more than that. If they want to sell it, we can throw all the roadblocks we up, but at some
We're
point,
limited.
move forward.
We're limited in terms of some of the things that we can or can't do. Also, just one of your comments was about restricted versus unrestricted funds. So in our audit presentation in the work session, actually, one of the questions we asked the auditor very specifically was to maybe sort of categorize restricted versus unrestricted, and then committed versus assigned. And there, as a CPA, you probably know far better than I, there's actually a distinction. What we can do if the money comes from the outside, so if you made a donation for that purpose, it's restricted for that purpose because of the external nature of the source in terms of that. So in some cases, it's restricted whether we take action or not. In other cases, we can then take a more formal action if we internally say, or if we turned around and said, we're going to allocate money for a particular purpose, then some things go with that, whether we do it by resolution or ordinance. So that was something we talked about very specifically with the auditor. So there's different ways. First of all, as always, we appreciate the comments, and we appreciate certainly when the newsletter, neither one of us, we don't draft, and certainly we appreciate the input, and certainly it's our effort to always try to be understood. Point made, understood.
And I, same both ways here. I understand your points. But just if I can touch on a couple of them, because there was a bunch of things kind of in there.
Actually, no. And I don't mean to, yes and no. Yes, you can make a quick comment to sort of.
Okay, real quick. The donor restricted funds. If somebody outside gives money, it's restricted. The bulk, that's like, my understanding, it's like 10 grand or something. It's not a big number. The $1.5 million came from, my understanding from before, came from the township, which is unrestricted, according to the Conservation Finance Study, which is obviously probably correct. The other thing is I'm not against developing per se. I mean, I
Right.
understand there's a balance, so I'm not going crazy the other way. But I do think that, there's significant support for, I mean, let's put the referendum aside. It is done. But, my point is taking that unrestricted, making it restricted goes a long way to show credibility that that is earmarked for the open space. And, yes, people should contribute. People should contribute to a lot of nonprofits around the country for very good reasons. But you know what? They don't get a lot of money. You'll never get enough to make a big dent in the open space by purely contributions from people, which is why all the townships around us have an open space dedicated funding source, i.e. an earned income tax. Anyway, thank you.
Right, yeah, I agree with you, Chip, but it's nice to have the people at least try to contribute. As you said, it's only $200. Right, get $200, and the township will do something again in the fall or maybe the early winter, encouraging the people again to try to donate, to try to get a group of people from the township really involved in this and saying, listen, contribute. And from working with the county, I know we have people in the county that have donated large sums of money to preserve space in their townships, just as you said. I agree. So it's there. Thank you, Bob.
We're good. Okay. As always, comments appreciated. Bert?
Good evening. Bert Hines, Worcester. I'm going to speak tonight as president of Friends of Worcester because I think it's important that folks understand. You hear a lot about Friends of Worcester and where do we stand on things. Yesterday, I sent a letter to all three supervisors, and if you'll indulge me, I'll read that letter. It won't take long, so that the entire community can hear what was said. On behalf of the Friends of Worcester, I'm writing to express our disappointment that the residents of our township will not have the opportunity, via a referendum this November, to express their wishes about funding open space in Worcester. Whether our residents would have approved or denied the referendum question is less important than the fact that the request of over 900 voters for a referendum opportunity was ignored. Regardless of the state of our current economy or other factors cited by some of our supervisors for not allowing the referendum to proceed, the fact remains that those elected to represent the members of our community opted to silence the voices of a substantial cross-section of our community. It was a disheartening outcome following a year of encouraging discussion on the topic of open space funding. Still undeterred, we believe the majority of Worcester residents support preserving our open spaces, and we are seeking ways to collaborate with you to actively reflect our residents' desires. We applaud your stated goal of preserving 300 acres by 2033, and we want to work with you to find viable ways to make that goal a reality. A few of our ideas include making the current open space fund a dedicated and restricted fund, having the township annually contributed to a dedicated open space fund similar to the annual township contribution to our fire company's support. And this goes to Steve's point, seeking ways to encourage resident support of the township's matching funds campaign for open space contributions. We're looking for a path forward that will increase the likelihood of preserving the character and the ambiance of our unique township. If we can believe what we have heard from you for the last year, that you support open space preservation, then let's find a way together to make that vision a reality for all our residents. And I signed it respectfully, my name, as president of Friends of Worcester. In addition to that, I want to share one other thing. As Bob said, and it's very clear to all of us, that the referendum is a dead issue for this year. But since our last meeting, I've become aware that Westtown Township, and I knew they were working on an open space referendum. They have a 300-acre farm they're trying to preserve down there. It was part of the Brandywine battlefield. And the way they're approaching their referendum this November, they're using a combination of a real estate tax and an earned income tax. I know it's not going to happen here this year, but I'm planting a seed tonight that maybe a hybrid is a way to look at this going forward down the year, if we're looking down the road, if we're looking to find a way to fund open space. Steve, I know that you've talked about the matching funds program, and ideally, it's a great idea. Realistically, I don't think you're going to get the type of money. Even when people get on board, I'm not sure we're going to get enough on board, given everyone's best efforts, to bring in the types of dollars that we're going to need when opportunities come available to preserve open spaces. I'm hopeful. I want to be optimistic, but I also think we have to start thinking of, if this doesn't work, what else can we do? Again, Friends of Worcester wants to work collaboratively with you to come up with solutions that work for everyone in this township. So thank you.
Bert, once again, as I said before, we said I think the real estate tax should bring in $400,000, whatever it was. I said I'd vote as a board member to give the $300,000 or $400,000. It's not my money. I'll take the $300,000 or $400,000 out of this fund, put it over there, rather than asking the taxpayers who may not have the money. I don't know what everyone's financial situation is right now. Can they afford that extra money? Would the price of, if you follow the PUC, I think PECO's rates are going up 17% come January 1st. That's a big jump in people's electric bills and all the other costs associated with that. So we have the money. We can just move it over until maybe 2 years. We do the referendum, and then we can do it. But we have enough money right now to carry that. That's number one. Number two is, I got your letter yesterday, and I thought it was a good, well-written letter. So what I did was, I took it to a local school board member who probably used to be your boss. And I said, when things came up in the North Penn School District, did the school board always vote the way all the residents wanted to? They said, no, that's why we sat on the board. We made the decisions because we were elected by the people to make the decisions. And you certainly know this, and I'm trying to play fair in the playground here, but you sat there as a manager, as a principal in the school, where you heard the board not always do what the majority of the people that came to the school board meeting in the auditorium yelled and wanted. And that's why they got elected. They got elected to sit there. And as I said before, that's what it comes down to, the ballot box. You want to make a change in 2 years, the position's up in 4 years, I guarantee you I'm not running this time again. So it doesn't matter to me, but that's where the change is made. But it's not easy sitting up here. You're elected to do the work of the people, and that's why I made the call and said, hey, Bert was part of the team. He was part of the team. Always didn't agree with the people in the audience wanted, but the board decided what the direction they're going in, and that's what we did. And a lot of cat calls and problems and things, but it worked out.
It worked out.
But I thank you for the letter.
Okay.
So the only thing I'll add to that is we bought open space. We put our money where our mouth is. I mean, I understand, and you were here last month. I made the motion that didn't get seconded. So that aside, and I respect the board members, we didn't say no to open space. Like, we didn't. We've bought open space. We put programs in place. We've said we're committed to it. We've taken specific actions to be committed to it, which doesn't mean we did everything you wanted. I get that. But it also doesn't mean that, as you said, it doesn't mean that it just stops, ultimately. It's a step, and then there'll be another step and another step. So it didn't, I hear you. We largely agree, but we don't always have the exact same decisions as a result of that. But ultimately, I got the letter as well. I responded to you yesterday about sitting down. So we're on board with that. Like, we're not saying we won't do that. We're not saying the door is closed on those sorts of things, but it's an imperfect system on its best day. We're still fortunate. We had the audit presentation tonight. We have money. We have never said we wouldn't allocate money for different things, and that's always an open question and conversation so that we can take steps from our standpoint as well. But we appreciate the comments as always, and we'll move on.
Thank you.
Rick, to follow up on just what you said, I think probably by the end of the year, it would take a year to get that tax money. I think by the end of the year, we'll have, hopefully in that fund, the money that would have been generated by sending the tax notice out to all the people, or the referendum out there. The referendum would have been done in January or November. It may take a year to get that money in. I would hopefully think that that fund would be well-funded by the end of this year. So, thank you.
Winnie?
Winnie Hayes, Fisher Road. I don't think the thoughts of FOW can be better expressed than what was expressed by Bert as our president. So I'm not going to try to repeat what he said. I'm going to reinforce something that FOW and people that volunteer in some of the programs that we're involved in, some of the efforts, want to work with the township to accomplish the end goal, which is to preserve open space. I do want to say, though, that the communication that this represents is a distortion of what really is going on, and it's troubling. And the thing that troubled me the most, and Steve, I really hear you when you say that you felt that as our elected official, you had a responsibility to make a decision. And your decision was that, given the economic climate, you didn't want the referendum to go on the ballot. But what I'd like to point out that is different here than with, say, the school board, is that referendums in this state are designed to give the decision to the people. That's who it's designed for. It's not designed where supervisors will make a decision about whether or not they're going to tax their citizens to gain monies for a purpose. And what was troubling to me is that the 947 signatures on those petitions were ignored. You took the decision away from the people. The people should have had the right to make the decision. If they voted it in, great. If they didn't, that's so be it. So my feeling is they should have had that right to make that decision. The second thing is, I'm sure Tommy wrote this. I know you don't write the newsletter, but there are distortions here. You didn't reject a call to raise taxes. You didn't vote to let the people make the decision about whether to raise taxes or not. This is not a small group of people. We have a lot of evidence that people in this township really care about open space. So hopefully, what you're telling me is going to happen, that you're going to take the increased monies coming in that we heard about in your work session and allocate those taxes coming from real estate transfers and stuff like that. You're going to allocate that money to a dedicated open space fund. We heard earlier also that when the township matches, those match funds are restricted funds. There may be other methods of restricting funds, so no matter who's in office, those funds, as they grow, are there to be used for open space purposes. And I don't mean just acquisition. I mean developing like a park, maintaining trails. There's things like that. But it'll be used for that purpose because it's important to this township. And it's disturbing when the township didn't get to make that particular decision. So the only way we can work around that is to work with you all to make sure that some of our tax dollars are going to that. Let me make one other comment about the voluntary fund. There are a number of residents who've worked for many, many years and contributed many, many dollars to promote open space in this township. My family's one of them, but there's a whole bunch of other people. That money may not flow directly to the township, but it's flowing to the effort. It's part of how we do outreach and we educate and we do things like that. And I'm with Bert. It's foolish to think that just voluntary contributions is going to get us there. We have to have your help by taking an allocation of the monies you already receive and dedicating it to open space. That's really important. So please, let's not see our township newsletter become a vehicle for promoting a particular position. This article had many inaccuracies in it when it characterized the people supporting the referendum as a small group. It was not a small group. It was 947 people plus others who volunteered to distribute that information. That's not a small group. Thank you.
When and I'm not sure what Tommy's, once again, I didn't see the article. I'm not throwing Tommy on the bus. However, it was there, but I think he did the math of the 9,000 voters in the township, whatever there are, and there are 900 voters. So I'm not sure what that percentage is there.
But where was the vehicle? We did it
Yeah,
at the primary. It's
I'm not-
based on the
I'm not
people
defending
coming.
anybody. I'm just saying where the math came from. I don't know. I wasn't involved in writing the article.
Well,
But as I said before, I understand, much like Bert said, we can't depend on all this money just to come from donations. The purpose of the referendum, they get that. And I said, and I'll say it again, that's why I said the township would give you the money. You don't have to worry about the referendum. It's done. The money you would wait a year and a half to get the money for referendum. By the end of this year, there'll be $400,000 and that open space fund.
Okay.
They're ahead of the game. Then, if we turn around in the country, I have no problem with a referendum.
okay.
But it was a bad
And
time
I
to do
got
it based
that.
on all the
I just
expenses
wanted to
there.
be characterized accurately here. And the math is real easy. When you look at the number of people who voted in the primary, and I don't mean mail-in, I mean at the point, we got a huge turnout for people for the referendum. One other thing, none of us are naive enough to think that there won't be any development of land. Obviously, land's going to be developed. Nobody here is saying that people who own land shouldn't be able to sell that land and see it developed. But we have ordinances and zoning codes for a reason. They protect the interest of all the residents in the township. And because somebody has property doesn't mean that it's wonderful and okay that they should be able to just overturn zoning codes and ordinances and do whatever they want at the detriment to the township. You all are doing the right thing by asking our solicitor to represent the township in upholding our zoning ordinances. That's really important, and we support that. It's critically important. So don't think that people who are pro-open space are just pro-no development. That's unrealistic. It's inappropriate. People have a right to do what legally they have a right to do with their property. We're talking about taking advantage of opportunities to take land that has all kinds of value in terms of enhanced home values, in terms of the natural land and its ability to handle stormwater runoff. I can go on and on. It's appropriate for a township to look at those opportunities and hopefully be in a position where they can financially take advantage of that and preserve some of that. And some of the preservation might result in parks, but some of it might be to retain it in its natural state because that has value too. Sure. That's it. You're welcome.
Thank you for your comments. Does anybody else have any public comment for the board tonight? Sue?
So I have something written up, but I'd really like to speak from the heart. I was out of state last month for the Board of Supervisors meeting. In fact, I was in South Dakota, surrounded by green, open space and land that's preserved by the federal government there. It just brought home to me how wonderful it is to the soul and the spirit to be able to look out your window and see an expanse of green and trees. Anyway, I was disappointed to hear about the motion not getting seconded and didn't pass, but but as time passed, I get it. You didn't want to, you don't want taxes to be raised for the residents when there wasn't an obvious need, because we do have $18 million extra in our budget. Some of that money is designated for capital expenditures, as it should be. Some capital expenditures, we know what it's going to be, some we don't. But that leaves a fair amount, I think $14 million, to do what's needed in a township. But before I go any further, what I wanted to say, and the other speakers have touched on this, is how important I think it is that we work together for the good of the residents of Worcester. I believe that you believe you were doing that when you didn't pass the motion. You want to be able to say that taxes weren't raised. You're proud of Worcester's unusually low taxes. I get that. But there is also some long-time tensions between different personalities in this township, and that's painful to me. It's time to let bygones be bygones, wipe the slate clean, start to address principles above personalities. All of us need to have the courage to say, oh, I see it differently now, or not be afraid to say, let's work together to get this done. So I think it's important that we see what we believe in common rather than fighting over what we don't. It's important to begin anew with a fresh and aligned vision of what Worcester can continue to be. And I'm going to assume that an aligned vision is not to have a big development at Center Point, the corner of 363 and 73, the most traveled and seen intersection in our township. The current challenge in front of the Zoning Hearing Board is extremely important to defeat, or it will mean a huge sea change throughout the township. And I really don't believe any of you or any of the residents want that. So committing to publicly to pay for the defense of our zoning ordinance is really, really important. This is money extremely well spent and necessary. It's just as important as building a new bridge or renovating streets or hiring people to fight fires. Let me repeat that. Paying for our attorneys to defend our zoning ordinance when it's being frivolously challenged, as it has been, is just as important as paying for infrastructure and other salaries. There's no precedence in Pennsylvania for what they're trying to do at Palmer. So hopefully we will continue to support that effort to defeat that challenge. And I just think it's important that we not have an attitude of us versus them. We are here as residents and concerned citizens, and we want to work together to get, to be able to maintain Worcester with its rural ambiance that it has. And I think that's important for all of us to do. And I've heard a lot of commitment so far in the room for that, and it makes me feel good. Thanks.
Susan, thank you for your comments. Does anybody else have any public comment for us this evening? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on. Before we get to our official agenda, though, we have somebody in the back of the room, and I'm glad he was able to attend tonight, but we have, it's a volunteer award that 50 years, I believe is the number, or north of 50 years. So Dave Cornish started volunteering for our community when I was 5-ish. I look slightly older than 5 now. And all along the way, he's quietly done volunteer work. Winnie, you talked about people getting involved and doing a lot of volunteer work behind the scenes that a lot of times you don't see firsthand. And Dave's a good example of that. He's been involved with our fire company for decades, literally decades. And several years ago, when we, as a township, said we have a gap in our staffing and needed a fire marshal in order to satisfy some requirements, Dave stepped up, and he didn't need to. And certainly he had more than done his share. He had carried water, no pun intended, with the fire company for a long, long time. And he then spent several years helping us with items that we needed as a fire marshal, because as a volunteer fire department, there were some mechanics in having that as a role internally that was really very helpful. And we tried to talk him out of it, but he told us at a point in time, gee, I think I'm getting to the end. I think I'm getting the end of my volunteer cycle. And ultimately, there's no great way to say thank you other than thank you. I mean, here, we have a gift for you, but ultimately, you've put the township before yourself for a long, long time. We appreciate that in ways that words really don't demonstrate. This award doesn't, fully sort of pass that along. You've put up with all the things that go with being a fire marshal that aren't awesome, in addition to all the things that are pretty cool that you can do in that role. And you did it all in a way with a lot of dignity and in a way that certainly we can be very proud as the township in how you were representing us out there, and certainly the fire company and the manner in which you served for a long, long time is spectacular. So I'm going to ask you to come up for this. I know you're a man of few words, so I'm not going to force you to say anything, but ultimately we certainly appreciate it, Dave. And Barb, if we could ask you to come up here as well so we could maybe just get a picture. Okay, folks, so moving forward, we have our official action items of our agenda. So the first item on our official agenda is the consent agenda. First and foremost, Steve, do you have any items that you wish to remove from the consent agenda tonight?
No, sir.
Okay, so then I will make a motion that we approve the consent agenda that includes the following items. It's the treasurer's report and other monthly reports for July 2022, the bill payment for July 2022 in the amount of $278,133.08, and the approval of the July 2022 business meeting minutes.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion passes. Next item is Resolution 2022-18, which is going to be a resolution authorizing the taking of property by deed in lieu of condemnation, and I'm going to hand that over to Bob.
Thank you. As you know, in connection with the purchase of the open space property, closing is scheduled tomorrow. Our new interim manager did a walkthrough of the property the other day and is thrilled, I think, coming from Upper Dublin to Worcester to see a wonderful farm being preserved. The code permits what I'm going to term a friendly condemnation. That is, if the supervisors pass a resolution of a fee in lieu of eminent domain, you save $20,000 in transfer tax to Worcester, the buyer, and $20,000 in transfer tax to the seller. So it's a resolution that would authorize the requisite township officials and staff to execute the settlement documents tomorrow, but more importantly, authorizes a deed in lieu of condemnation to save $40,000 in the transaction. So it's a very simple resolution, and it would need a motion and a second.
Okay. First, Steve, do you have any questions with regard to the motion?
No, sir.
Okay, neither do I. I think it's a good mechanical step to save a little money. Transaction still happens as we've laid it out, so I will make a motion to approve Resolution 2022-18, which is authorizing the taking of property by deed in lieu of condemnation.
And I'll second that motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion that's on the floor? Seeing, oh. Okay, so, sir, if you would come to, I'm going to.
I don't know.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you to sit down, tell us who you are, jot your name down, and then we'll roll.
Sorry. Hi, I'm Frank Kramberger, 1420 Valley Forge Road, right down the street here. The paperwork that we received offers us 90 cents a square foot.
Different motion.
Yes.
We're talking about
you're
a
next.
property we're buying.
So this,
Oh,
You can just
well
sit
then
there.
I screwed up. See, I don't know none of you guys, and I'm not a politician,
no, I'm not either, but
Now this particular motion is for a property that we're acquiring. You're the next item on our agenda, I believe.
I'm
which is-
early?
You're early. You're early to the party.
you can stay there because we're going to get right to you.
I don't care, do I get a crown or something?
Okay. I guess the question will be, is there any public comment on the motion on the deed in lieu of condemnation? There's none.
Okay, so seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Next item on our agenda
Can we skip that one?
You're cute.
is going to be a motion to approve certain right-of-way, permanent easement, and temporary construction easement agreements for the Valley Forge Road Corridor Improvement Project. I'm going to hand that over to you, Bob, as well.
Thanks. The Valley Forge Corridor Improvement Project requires a great number of easements, temporary construction easements, et cetera. And correspondence has gone out to those folks that were required to obtain easements from, various easements for various properties. That went out from the township manager probably in June or July. We have, because we need, I think there's probably 55 various easements and things that are needed from various properties. We have a series of them that have come back that have been signed. And I don't, your last name is?
Kramberger. Mine ain't signed, I can tell you that.
No. So let me get to the ones that are
right,
signed so the board understands and so you understand.
Yeah.
So as these come back in groups, the board, because it's an easement, it deals with real estate, the board's required to authorize execution of it, meaning signing of it. And these are grouped tonight for the Campbell, the Schoenfeld properties, the Nugent properties, and the Potter properties. And they range from temporary construction easements to actual rights-of-way, to traffic signal, and again, to right-of-way. So they're all germane for the board to make a motion to authorize execution of those documents. And I'll talk about yours in a minute if you'd like.
Oh, sure.
And so that would be the motion.
Okay.
Then you can
so-
take public comment on that motion.
And it doesn't involve him at this present time.
That's why I asked his name.
Yeah, right.
It does not involve you on these properties. We're not taking any action in connection with whatever your particular property is. Okay?
Okay.
But you can ask a question about your, whatever.
Let's,
Yeah, I
why don't we get through the motion on
We'll
this?
get to motion, then we'll entertain your question about your property.
Okay.
That's right?
Whatever makes you happy, You're in charge.
Okay.
Don't want you to get too comfortable sitting in that seat, though. You have to move after a while.
So, all right, so I'll make a motion that we approve certain right-of-way, permanent easement, and temporary construction easement agreements for the Valley Forge Road Corridor Improvement Project in the name of the residents that Bob just articulated, which is Campbell, Schoenfeld, Nugent, and Potter.
And I'll second that motion.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Now we're going to, if you could just ask your question about as well as these.
So let me give you some background so you understand where we are here. We had, in a moment, we're going to accept the resignation of the former manager, and the interim person is going to be here. And so you've received correspondence from us. I don't have yours memorized, but what I would encourage you to do is if you have questions or any comments, you can certainly make them here tonight. But I'd encourage you to meet with our interim manager. If you need our traffic engineer that's designed the project to answer any questions, I'd encourage you to do that at the Township Building. It's a very simple, many of your questions may be answered there, and
I did some of that already.
Sure.
And I didn't get the response that I liked, so that's
Okay.
the reason I'm here.
so why don't you give it new, fresh eyes to whatever your project is and say whatever you like.
I hate to say this, okay, I hate to say this right here, you know, but now Tommy Ryan's gone and we got a new interim manager. I really don't like the fact that we have an interim manager that doesn't live in Worcester, all right? That really irritates me a lot, all right? Somebody has to be here to be part of what they're gonna do to us, rather than live somewhere else and, oh yeah, screw that place, I'll move on. I live somewhere else, all right?
I'll help you out with that.
Okay, good.
I've sat here 15, 16 years. We probably had 8, 9 managers. I'd lose track after a while. And every time we interviewed one, the board never wanted somebody from within the township. That was sort of a no-no.
Why is that?
Why is that? You know what?
Yeah,
I'm not a professional manager,
Right.
but maybe our interim manager, who's been doing it for 30-some years in his other township, would know the workings of that. I guess that too comfortable with the situation, people be calling him all the time, people doing that. I'm not saying that's the right thing, and I'm not saying going forward,
Right.
that'd be the way we would do it. But it was generally talked about
But it was like,
that it'd be an outside person, fresh set of eyes looking at the township. I'm not saying that's the way it should be, but I think that's where it came from. Is usually an outside manager, Paul, is it half and half in most townships where?
It's a condition of employment. It is becoming more and more rare that boards would require residency. It is done, but it has to be done as a condition early on.
So let me focus back on the gentleman's issue. So
okay,
we can't do much about, we needed an interim manager to
I understand that.
very short-term basis.
all right.
We got
I
a
just
very,
wanted to voice my opinion about,
yeah, I got it, but I'm trying to get to your issue.
Yeah,
So
go ahead.
you got an experienced and seasoned interim manager. He doesn't live here, but we're going to have to, find a manager.
right,
But rather than go into the details here, I would love you to be able to meet with him, and if you need our design engineer that designed that and any other information, we'll be happy to go over that with you.
most of it's about real estate, all
Yep,
right?
yep.
The fact that they offered me 90 cents when everybody here knows that acreage in
Yeah.
Worcester is somewhere around $3.
Yeah.
They offered me 90 cents a square foot instead of $3 a square foot, all right? And I don't care how you like that up or who I have to talk to. That's not right, all right? It should, okay, we're gonna come in and take this. No, you ain't, all right? Not anytime soon,
Yeah, well.
all right? That's the way I feel about it.
And that's what I would like to be able to give you the opportunity to articulate that in a manner in which you have plenty of time to talk about it,
Okay,
okay?
all right?
Would that be
And
fair?
I also wanted to know why we aren't working on the other side of the road where that reservoir. Reserve.
The engineer can tell you that. That's something that the design engineer has to tell you.
That's where Tommy Ryan went,
What's that?
to the engineers, to the same engineers the township uses, isn't it?
I don't know, but our traffic engineer.
Traffic, I think it's different traffic guy.
Different engineer?
Our traffic engineer is a company called McMahon, and they're the ones that would know the answers to your questions.
Okay, because I called them and I asked them about it and they kind of just, blow me off as an idiot,
Okay?
all right?
Well, I don't think you're an idiot. We'll be
Yeah.
happy to help you out.
You got plenty of time.
Okay?
All right, so
You gotta leave your seat now.
I gotta get up? Oh, man.
Thank you, sir.
All right,
Thank you.
I guess you want me to sign this
I
thing?
do want you to sign your name,
I'd
so
like to have your name.
we need it, we record the minutes, we want to make sure we get your name correct.
Yeah, so when you chase me out of town, is that what it's for?
as you're signing that, he is an interim manager. He's only here certain days a week that he's a fill-in. So I think you have to coordinate with Paul that he may be here 2 days a week or 3 days a week, or so he's not giving you the
Because he what, lives in
runaround.
Oklahoma?
Pardon?
Because he lives in Oklahoma?
Put it this way, I will tell you this. He's the first township manager I know that rides his bike to the office.
The what?
He actually rides his bicycle to work.
Could you write your address down so we know?
And then I can post the information.
Okay. I'll get it on a piece of paper, give him a little bit.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so next item on our agenda is going to be a motion to approve the 2023 MMO contribution to the Worcester Township pension plans. So every year, we have minimum municipal contributions that we need to make to our, we actually have two different pension plans. One was a defined benefit plan, one was a defined contribution plan, but ultimately, you have the information in your packets, folks, where it just sort of outlines the dollars that we need to specifically allocate as a result of the municipal obligation. Steve, I don't know if you have any specific questions on that. I know this is an item we do every year, and we just need to make sure we're funding properly on that particular item.
I think it's really, as you said, Rick, just making sure we're doing it the right way.
Paul, do you have anything to add on the municipal contribution? It's pretty straightforward in terms of the calculation.
Department of the Auditor General's Office. The funding that comes from the state toward this plan is contingent upon the township meeting its MMO, minimum obligation. When you do this, it allows you to get state aid towards this pension fund.
Thank you.
Okay, then I will make a motion to approve the 2023 MMO contribution to the Worcester Township pension plans.
And I'll second that motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. So next up, we've got a couple of items to deal with in terms of resignations and appointments. So first, we have a motion to accept the resignation of Mike Torres, who's a public works laborer. And as you know, as it's a personnel issue, we just need to accept the resignation. There really isn't any public comment on that, although let me rephrase that. We do take public comment. We really can't speak about a resignation past that. So I will make a motion to accept the resignation of Mike Torres, who's a public works laborer.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Next up is a motion to accept the resignation of Thomas Ryan, Township Manager. Again, we really can't go into extensive details other than to say that Tommy was here for 7 years. He had an opportunity which he chose to take, and he has tendered his resignation here. So I will make a motion to accept the resignation of Thomas Ryan, Township Manager.
And I'll second that motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Next up, we have an appointment. It's going to be an appointment, a motion to appoint Paul Leonard as the interim township manager, secretary, right-to-know officer, pension plan administrative officer, zoning officer, and delegate to the Montgomery County Tax Collection Committee. Bob, I'm going to ask you to maybe just say just a quick word about sort of that process.
As we announced at the beginning, we received advice from the then manager that he was going to be resigning. Heard that, got together with the board in executive session on or about July 26th. It was important for us to keep the township going, so we reached out to Paul Leonard, experienced and seasoned 30-some-year veteran from Upper Dublin Township, who agreed to step in and provide that interim management basis for us. At the same time, we're involved in a search for a permanent candidate through Roseanne McGrath, and we were able to get Paul here on an interim basis at least through the end of September. until we can identify a candidate through the interview process. Paul and I have spoken since he was on board here. I believe the transition is going very smoothly. He's reached out to the board members, met each one of you, and I think we're doing a good job of plugging a hole here on an interim basis. So I'm pleased to work with Paul, and if anybody would have anything to ask me, I'd be happy to answer it. But it just needs a motion. I think I gave you enough background.
Yep.
And that's where we are. Okay?
Perfect. So ultimately, I concur with everything that Bob said. Ultimately, I think he said it very well. So I will make a motion to appoint Paul Leonard as interim manager, secretary, right-to-know officer, pension plan administrative officer, zoning officer, and delegate to the Montgomery County Tax Collection Committee.
I'll second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Next up, we have other business. I have one item for other business, but Steve already sort of talked about it, but there's a, join us for dinner. There's a Montgomery County Planning Commission Farmers Gathering that's taking place on this Sunday, the 21st, ultimately. And we'll do a couple things. We'll get that onto the website. We'll look to get that into the peak of the week to just let people be aware of it. It's an event. These are the types of events to try to educate people that have farms that they might want to preserve and sort of how that process can kind of work. And it's just one of the steps we can take to potentially try to encourage more people to think about preservation in terms of that. Steve, do you have any other business items you want to bring before the board tonight?
Just Rick, the other item is, I think I mentioned in the work session, that I've been contacted by a number of people through the Soccer Association involved in Worcester, as well as Matt Bradford's office regarding our fields. I guess Methacton High School uses them as well, and there's some water issues out there. It's pretty sloppy. So I think Mr. Bradford's worked with Whippane Township for some drainage issues and some turfing issues that they want to make a presentation. And I told the people, come to the meeting, stand up and speak. We can listen to you, we can move forward. No one's come, but I guess they will be coming in the future. So that's the only new item I have, Rick.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Okay. So next up, we have public comment. Does anybody have any additional public comment at this time? Susan?
Susan Smith. Well, my comments tag on to what you just mentioned about an educational function coming up this weekend, and that is that it's important, I think, that the Board of Supervisors instruct the township management to design a series of workshops and educational seminars to inform residents how they might apply for a combination of government agencies and land trusts to buy their development rights. Selling their development rights would give them much of the value of their property up front in cash before they sell it, retire, or die. So that would be money that they would receive prior to their retirement, and it would be money that they could use now to enhance their property, send their kids to college, start a new business. That is money that is best made by, I'll call it a younger person, so to speak, so that they can actually make use of that money, and that money could actually grow, that they get from selling their development rights. And Steve, you talk often about the farm board, I think it is, and but not many people know about it. So if the township sends out a weekly email, but just putting a sentence on there that says, call us if you want to know more, I don't think is enough. So I would love it if the township would hold a series of workshops and educational seminars and announce them for several weeks in advance and have experts there that can talk about the options. It wouldn't cost anything. I mean, these people that would come speak would do it probably for free because that's who they work for and that's what they do. So it wouldn't cost very much, it wouldn't take that much effort, but there are many residents, I'm sure, including me, who would be happy to help with these educational events. So that's my first point. Let's start an educational series. And my last point is, Steve, recently, and then again tonight, you said something about something worse than Palmer is coming. And what do you mean by that? Because personally, I can't imagine anything worse than that, but please tell us and let us know what the township and we residents can do to stop it if it should be stopped. And I can't imagine anything worse than the Palmer situation, but if there is, I think there's lots of us who would like to help stop it.
Once again, it doesn't become public till they make an official document to the township. I'm just saying that it's just, the board gets information, and we talk to people ahead of time, and they may not do it. I will have to wait and see till they make a application to the township.
Okay, so you think it might be coming, but we're not sure until it comes. And then we can't know what it is that's coming until it possibly gets here?
The answer to that, no. You know, it's just like I had the conversation before about being on the farm board. People wanted to know, it's, yeah, you can't, no. There's no application.
Okay,
It's not confidentiality. You could do a right-to-know request.
There is
but
no
There's
document.
no file, there's nothing into the township yet. So there's no file, there's no information to be gained. It's just conversations that people have.
Right.
And once again, I've always said, I've never engaged in conversations with people about their property because I think it's unfair, and I can cite situations where it happened in the township and we had problems. If they want to do something, they come and see the township manager. The township manager will then disseminate the information to all the board members, so we all know what's going on, and then get to put on a docket. So I think it's coming. Trust me, but
So I have nothing more to add other than our mechanism is pretty clear in that until there's an actual document that arrives.
so it's just like rumors and innuendos, but we don't get to know, because you're
Well,
talking
you
with...
can drive around the township, Susan, and take potluck pictures of, I think that one's coming, do I think that one's coming, or maybe it's that one?
So somebody's talked to you about it, but you don't want to talk about it on a
I
public...
think it's the Ollie Smith farm, I think if I remember.
That's already preserved, remember?
Yeah, that's right, I forgot.
A beautiful site that everybody gets to see when they drive down Fisher Road. So, all right, well, we're here to help defend against it if it's something that's actually worse than Palmer, because that's making me tremble a little bit.
Thank you for your comments,
Well,
Susan.
that's why you have a solicitor over there. Once again, there's zoning laws, and when this whole thing happened with Palmer's, it said, there's zoning laws. I mean, let them take care of it. And we, the supervisors, are not involved in that. The solicitor's involved in it, and we sit on the sidelines and watch, because,
Well, I'm
as
so
Winnie
glad-
said, there's laws, and the regulations are there for a certain thing. If they want to do something, they have to either prove a variety of things.
But I'm so glad that you are supporting having the township solicitor fight against somebody frivolously challenging our zoning.
Well, that's what the purpose of solicitor, the purpose of the board is, you have zoning laws.
The king of
and live
frivolous.
within the parameter of that.
We're going to add that to his title. No, but look, kidding aside, we did. We said defend it. I mean, we're doing exactly that, and sadly, it's an expensive and a long process, as we're seeing, but we're defending it, and that was the choice the board made, and
Thank you.
thank you for your comments, Susan. Does anybody else have any public comment? Okay, she's our neighbor. That's fine.
The mic can't get to her, I guess,
Yeah, we just.
Got it, thanks.
Yeah, and if you could, so right in front of you, there's a mic, and if you can just kind of pull that a little closer to you so that you can speak right into the mic for me. And you just tell us who you are, and then share your public comment.
I get how would I say, an echo back there, and I really don't hear well at all, besides the fact that I am 93.
You look better than me
You
at
do well.
55.
You look
Good for
good.
you.
Yes, I am 93. I've lived in Worcester Township for over 51 years. My husband was a state police officer, sergeant. He was 6 feet 3 inches, and I'm only not even 5 feet. okay? Now, I guess he would be proud of me, because as far as I'm concerned, when I received this packet, I called it a bribe of $3,000. Why? Why, when across the street, there is a 30 acres of ground gifted to the borough, to the Worcester Township. I live in Worcester Township. It's my privilege to say I could take, or I should say that not I could take, but PennDOT could take that rather than the residents on the east side. Now, I'll tell you too. You go to the top to find out whether I'm right or wrong. And I did. I went and I called the lady. She was the deputy secretary of PennDOT in Harrisburg. And her name is Patrice. And I told her, I said, why take my property or even my neighbors? They have children. There are cars and trucks, 18-wheelers coming down Valley Forge Road, 363, a state highway. It's ridiculous. You have to cause safety too, you know. When there's safety, the people are happy. And it is all about safety. Across the street, we could use that ground to widen this 363. Not the residents, not me, not that we bought the house. No, we built it from the ground up. And my husband, the best man in the world, if anything, as a state trooper and a sergeant. He would be proud to know that there are people who give up their grounds for the township. It's wonderful. And he's an Italian, Di Loro. I was born with an Italian descent, but I'm what they call mixed now. And all I am saying is you have to concentrate on the fact that this lady out of Harrisburg is giving you all the opportunity of using the DeLauro property
National Land Trust.
to expend, and that's what I'm here for. It's going to be dispended, and you're not going to touch my property, I'll tell you right now. $3,000 a bribe. Who wants that? Who cares? Maybe some people do, I don't know. But we're going to make good use of that highway, and that is move it over to the west side.
Okay. So we
Give
appreciate
it a
your
good
comments.
thought.
So what I'm going to
I
ask,
love Worcester Township.
thank you. So what I'm going to
That's
ask
exactly what
you
it's all
folks is just to
about.
make sure we get her name as well, jotted down. And again, this is a conversation for the township manager and the engineer, and certainly that's a conversation we can have and we will have in terms of that. But we just want to make sure we've got the name and the right address so that we know that would be perfect.
Ma'am, I think you have to understand
The
that
lady,
we all live in Worcester, we're all neighbors, friends, and we understand your pain. Nobody wants their land taken for anything, but as you said, You mentioned safety a number of times, and that's, I guess, the concern of the people at PennDOT, the engineers, the professional people involved in this. We have nothing really to do with delineating where the roads are going to go. It's up to the professional people to pick the spots for safety reasons, egresses, sight lines, and things like that. So we're beholden to them, Rick, the professional people that do that work.
Correct.
For we to sit there and disagree with them, that's why the township hires professional engineers, traffic people to do these studies. So to echo your point, a lot of people have just asked me about it. Why this section of Worcester Road? All the other roads in Worcester have problems. Why are we just picking on this section? It goes back to, I believe, the Kump Farm. You're familiar with the Kump Farm? You live in front of the Kump Farm. The Kump Farm is behind you. When that thing was developed back there some agreements made between Woodland Avenue and Trooper Road down there to fix the intersections along that way. There was grant money and stuff done 20-some years ago that the money would be spent to fix the road corridor along Valley Forge Road. This is the process been going on for years. It's not just something new. It's just coming around now to move up the ladder to get done. So I don't even know how long it would take to get done. So, but it's been, the Kump Farm was built 20 years ago, probably started.
Remember, the lady that I spoke to in Harrisburg, she was and is the Deputy Secretary of PennDOT. Deputy Secretary of PennDOT. And when I told her about the preservation, so she said, sure.
I think you get all the information to Mr. Leonard, and we can work with that.
You're not going to get very much territory from that. Even at that, there's not that much. They're not going to open that like a 4-lane highway.
One thing we appreciate are people in the township coming out and voicing the concern.
And if they are, good. It comes from the preservation.
Okay.
And it won't hurt anybody. And
Okay.
it's in use, and it's in good use.
Yep.
Fair enough. I
Very
appreciate
good
your
use.
comments.
What was your last name again, Rick?
You want to say something?
No, I'm going to sign you in.
Yeah, okay.
Can you tell her what the name was so we have it?
Put an M on it for the.
Thank you.
I'm on the phone with Miss, I guess, I don't know, maybe she is a Mrs., but she likes to be called Patrice.
Okay.
And that's it. I thought it was Patricia, and she said, Patrice. You know,
Yep.
I'll spell it for you. And when she did, I said, you're right. It is beautiful, the way you say it.
There you go.
She is beautiful. She is a wonderful person. I'll tell you another thing, too. One day I was coming off of Township. I was coming off, and I was going to make a left-hand turn, and it was winter. And it was kind of like slippery out a little bit and everything, and I said, someday, somebody's going to go right over the cliff into the ravine. Am I right? There is a ravine there. So I called the local PennDOT, and I asked them, can we get a guardrail?
Right.
And they said, well, we were trying, but it's not working out very well. So I thought to myself, okay, I'm going to go to Harrisburg. Lo and behold, when I said, someday I'm going to go over that cliff, and you know what my husband will do to you?
I'm sure they took care of it then. That's a good
And
story.
that's why today That's why today we have a, what do they call it?
A
A
guardrail.
guardrail. We have a guard. Do you see how long it is?
Nancy, I
Goes
thank you for
around
that story.
the
That's
corner
a,
of Stumpool Road.
that is a
All
perfect
the way, all
story.
the way up. I don't think they could have stopped.
okay, could you help Nancy? This is perfect.
Yes.
That's a good ending on that story, Nancy. I can ask you to, you can work back to your seat now. We have all your information, and the township will be in contact.
Yes. So when I want something, I get it.
Tuesday night's the next meeting, Tuesday night.
Okay, so while Nancy is working her way back to her seat, I'm going to ask, does anybody else have any public comment for the board this evening? Seeing none, I'm going to say motion to adjourn. Thank you all for coming. We